was it inside Indiana business?
Yes.
Okay, apparently it was in that.
I do that.
I just sent them.
It's just doing all of that.
At 10:03, all rise, say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome. How about if we do introductions? I'm George Topple, Union Township trustee in Porter County, and I current chair. Will I be chair for the?
You are the chair.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay.
Ma'am?
I'm Iman Ibrahim, Planning Manager here at NERC.
Valerie Kane, Economic Development District Coordinator for NERC.
I'm Annie Cruz Porter from Purdue Center for Regional Development, and I also have Indranil Kumar from PCRD, also online via the app.
I'm Heather Ennis, President and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Forum, playing the role of Spencer Summers today. And I have a guest with me today, Liz.
My name is Elizabeth Pitrin, from school in Indiana, Bloomington, and I'm here helping come into it. Nice.
I'm Susan Utterback, Talent Solutions Consultant from Center of Workforce Innovations, and I'm standing in for Lisa Doherty and her behalf.
I'm Sean Taylor from Valparaiso University.
John Milkovich, Councilman Lowell.
Jennifer Cardenas, Business Advisor with Northwest ISBDC.
Gary Johnson, Board Chair at the Society of Innovators at Purdue Northwest.
Lois Whitaker, the President of Black Chamber of Northwest Indiana.
David Phillips, I'm President of Beverly Shores Town Council.
Hello, my name is Sahil Shin. I'm working for PCRD as engagement specialist.
Floor Baum, NERC staff.
Thank you very much. Oh, hold it.
Tom Vanderwood, Transportation Director for NERC.
Meredith Stovall, NERC staff.
Okay, we get everybody? All right, well, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Okay, a motion can move without exception, or a motion will be accepted? There's no motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. I'll second it then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I did get a message from Andy Vasquez, who normally is on this committee, and he apologized, but he's flirting with the bugs, so he didn't want to allow us to visit those bugs. Amen. Take it away.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm giving a brief update on the housing. I'm working on the land use and housing section as part of the 2050 plus plan. So as we are looking for more analysis of housing, we're focusing on affordability. So I looked at more analysis for affordability here, and one of the things we looked at is the area median income, and that's established by HUD to decide on who's eligible to receive any housing programs funding. And I looked at this area, and usually they go 30% of the median income, and that's extremely low income. Also the very low income is between 30 and 60, and then if you're making less than 80% of the median income is still low income. So we looked at the Gary metro area here, and also I looked at the Michigan City LaPorte metro area, and here they show the affordability or how they decide on the low income for if it's a 1 person, or 2 person, 3 person, 4 person living in a household, how they decide. So for example, in Gary, if they are making 1 person making $19,000 a year per year, that's considered extremely low income. And then 2 person is $21,000 a year, also still extremely low income. And these people are eligible, of course, for a housing program and assistance. So, but as I looked into this data, we looked more in depth also, and we looked at the National Low Income Coalition, and they also do analysis for a rental home affordability for a 2-bedroom. And then they decide, for a 2-bedroom rent, what's the wages should be. And Indiana in general is about 22.07. That's the minimum that they can afford a 2-bedroom. And also for Gary specifically, metro area, which is Lake and Porter County, is about 24.12. However, the average income or hourly wages for low income is about 17.5. So that's mean, they don't meet the requirement to rent a 2-bedroom. So they look at, also for the minimum wage, which is in Indiana $7.25, they said, a person or a family that needs a 2-bedroom, they need to work 122 hours a week, which is, if it's a couple of family, they have to work 61 hours a week to afford that. If it's one person, they have to do 3 jobs full time. And that's really give us an indication about the recommendations coming, exactly what kind of programs that we need. Because also we looked at the median income, which is about $50,000 a year. They still need assistance, with mortgages, and they are not low income, but they still need some sort of assistance. And that's the analysis helping us understand, what's the need in our region. So also, we look more into this data in more details. I don't know if you can see that, but even I can't see it.
No, my glasses.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm old.
Obviously, I am too. I have the glasses.
So for the Gary metro area, which is a hub, the fair rental market, they said here 24.112. That's as I mentioned before, this is the wage that we need, and that's for a 2-bedroom. The fair market price is $1,200, about $1,200, and that's need a salary of $50,000. So, but now the median income was 72 in 23. Now the median income in 2024 is 90,000. So if we looked at the extremely low income, which is 30% of the median income of 90,000, is about 27,000 a year. Still, they cannot afford, as a family of two and a child, they cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment. So I don't want to go more details, but I have the Michigan City also in the bottom here. So the Michigan City here also have the same, but it's a lower. The area is cheaper than the Lake and Porter County, which is about 19.5 hourly wage. That's the requirement to afford 2-bedroom. So we looked at the 2050 plus recommendations here. The current density as of now, it's about 197 dwelling units per acre, but our recommendation is to, or the required density for the next 25 years is try to go to 5 dwelling units per acre. So, and in this one, we have the large lot. We still, it was like all the single family homes in our area was about 85% of single family homes within our region, which is significant, very high compared to duplexes and townhomes and multifamily. So what we did here, we did adjustment and we agreed on the 4th scenario, which reduced the number of the single family homes. People still like a number, a significant number in the region, they still like a big lot, but we reduced this amount to about 20%. And to do that, we need about, if we need to meet the 50,000 units by 2050, we need to add for this lot, which is about 1.5 units per acre, which is much better. We need 10,000 units. And then for the small lot, family, which we can fit like 7 houses, their acres, and I think we have that here in the village, in Burns Harbor, which is a great example. I'm always mention that they have really, you know, it's a single family homes, effective, good square footage, but they don't use a large lot. And we need that, we need more of this one, and we decided to look at, for the 25 years, the next 25 years, we need about 17,500. Also, we're focusing on the more of the duplexes, and we need 10,000 units in the next 25 years, and then the multi-families, which is the 4-plex townhomes and multi-story building apartment, we need about 12,500. So that's our needs here. But when you look at the chart here in the top, this one here showing the need per income. So the first one here on the left is for income up to 25,000. We have shortage actually for that, either rental or home-owned single-family homes or apartments. So for this one, we need about over like 9,000 units for this income, and that's something that HUD should work with communities to get this number. We still need also significant amount for the income between 25 and 50,000, over 11,000 units, and for the up to 75,000, we need 9,000. And then for the one making up to 100,000 income, we need about 6,700. Same for 100 and 158,000 units, and then over 150 up to like 500, we need 5,000 units almost. So these are the numbers or our needs for the future. We looked also at, and basically it's a missing middle housing, and that's showing some examples of the missing middle housing of duplexes and 4-plexes and cottages and townhomes. So, and I made a comparison here. I was looking for the same square footage if we build a new duplex, which it costs between 285 to 537, versus a single family homes with the same square footage, it will cost between 390,000 and 700,000. So that's a significant, you know, like for the future. And as I look more here, like in February of 2024, they listed like 336 new construction homes, with the median listed price is over 400,000. So, and that's still, all the new construction is too costly now because of the lack of labor, materials got expensive, they have shortage, and that's so it's taking more time and longer time to build a new homes. The older homes median sale price was about 250,000, which is 40% less than the new construction. So people still, you know, like tend to go to older home than new construction. So I looked at Zillow, and the current new construction in the whole Northwest Indiana that is now available for sale, about 840 units. And it's showing a different one here, which is, do we have a light? Do we have a light? Oh, here you go. Sorry. This is like a new home in Gary, and this one for about 215. And it's about 1,500 square feet. And that's, we see more in Gary going within this range. Also, we have like Kingsford Heights. They have like a significant amount of a new construction, but this one like it's 1,500 square feet and about 250. Look here at St. John, for example. They build townhomes, and that's about, St. John is expensive. The least is, this one is the cheapest in St. John, and it's 300,000, and this one going over $1 million. Portage here, they have around between 300 and 400 with the construction. Michigan City here also, they have some new townhomes, which are about 240,000. So the least new construction I found was 210 or 215. And that's, again, is not affordable, even though it's like the one in the bottom is 1,200 square feet. This one, so it's the size of an apartment, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment, and it's still over 200,000. So that's, again, you know, like, and the new thing here is I looked also at the housing vacancy. So we have all of this new construction, we have houses for sale, but then I found out within our region, we have about 10,000 vacancy rate. So we have over 32 or 33,000 units vacant. And that's the information came in 2022. We're still looking at more recent data in 2024. We try to figure out, you know, like what kind of vacancy. Is that like not like available for people to live in? And if people, I know that some of the Lake Michigan, the beaches community, they have like up to 40,000 here. If we look at the LaPorte here, all of the first 4 here, they have up to 45,000 because it's vacation homes. So that's a significant number. But again, so we need 50,000 units to be built by 2050. So what about all of these vacancies that we have? Do we need to redevelop? Do we need to check on this housing? And that will be a recommendation for community to have like an inventory of the vacant housing. You know, what's the condition of this housing? That's really important because some developers really willing to take some houses and redevelop it, and it's in a good location. Most of them in Gary, Chicago, Hammond, Portage, Valparaiso. So these still have a good community. So that's something that like we should look at. And I'm doing more analysis, and I'm gonna have like more results coming. And now I cannot go longer than that. So the next meeting here, I will focus more on the.
And Iman, what is your population growth index? Do you have
Yeah, it's like a 4%, 5%. It's not, yeah. So we calculated the need based on that by 2050, the population, you know, how many people we have. So, but like again, you know, like we still have significant vacancy, and we have to balance between, do we need to build the new construction? If we build the half of that and redevelop, so if we build 25,000, like we have to add in the next 25 years, 1,000 units a year. And that's the number that we really need to present it to communities, present it to developers, so they will be aware exactly what's the need. So in the next meeting, I will
have you seen the, I guess I'll call them the model home plans that Notre Dame has developed?
Yes, yeah, it's between 500 and 2,000 square feet.
What's your opinion of that?
I really like it. I really like it. I hope that they can do something like that. I just checked on that. I wish if I attended the charrette, but it's really, I think it's a good initiative, you know, especially for Gary, and I'm glad that Notre Dame is taking care of it.
Do you have an idea of the size of the population in those low-income categories, those different low-income categories?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it now, but I have the information. Yeah.
Couple questions. One, is your data available somewhere on the NERC website, or?
I can have the presentation, but like the data is huge.
Well, I mean, the presentation, you know, the stuff that you're showing, is this available on the NERC website at all?
I will put it on the NERC under the economy and place.
The other question I have is, are you looking at infrastructure? You're talking about 50,000 homes.
That's the next one, you know, like, because we're gonna look at also, we have in the 2050 plan a recommended area for the future growth, and it's mostly within the the existence of infrastructure. Otherwise, we have very low density, which is outside, and it's a very limited growth area that we have to depend on like well and septic, and so we don't recommend that much. But like when we recommended the future growth, we made sure it's within the infrastructure.
And we're studying wastewater treatment capabilities and future permitting based on today's standards.
Yeah, well, I'm not the one doing that. Environmental department is taking care of this stuff, but like that's one of the recommendations. I think by the next meeting, I will have a specific recommendation, starting, from the type, the infrastructure we need, also the funding program or assistance programs. That's coming in the next meeting.
Did I hear that your projection was based on a 4% growth rate through 2050?
Yeah. We don't have like really, like aggressive growth rate in Northwest Indiana, and we also, when we looked at the density, we still kept, like some large lot single-family homes, because that's the trends in Northwest Indiana. You cannot go very aggressive like in Chicago suburb or Chicago, because people still like some, good number of people like the low density.
Now, thinking of infrastructure particularly, that's a great question, but think about wastewater, roads, police and fire protection and all of that. And there's such a big difference between the legacy cities and redevelopment of rural land. So how are you going to address that to try to make the most of what's already there versus continuing sprawl?
That's up to the communities. Like from the regional perspective, we cannot force anything on local governments. We just make recommendations for them, but that's their.
So what would your recommendation be? I know you don't control it, so
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
I would recommend, if you looked at the 2050 plan, we are not encouraging this growth. It's all within the community. It's all around, within the urbanized area, around the boundary of the communities. We still try to control the growth, because we try to control also building new roads or extending infrastructure. So that was our recommendation in the 2050 plan.
And so you don't have the cost of infrastructure expansion built into your
No.
construction costs.
No,
So
that's the next step. So that's what we do now. Once we have recommendation from the 2050 plan,
yeah.
it's the next steps is do more analysis now. Like the housing, we have some like general recommendations. Now we take it as implementation and we try to do more work.
It would seem that if you included the infrastructure cost into the construction cost, that you would get radically different numbers than you have, and begin to lean it towards building where the infrastructure already exists.
Yeah, but that's a good point, and that's what we try to push to be around. We encourage redevelopment within the urbanized area more than sprawl. And actually, we have that in the scoring for like when we fund the projects or provide funds to the communities, we give like more scores. If you build within the urbanized area.
If I may, I'd like to see more attention put to emerging communities and sanitary sewers and the infrastructure that you're talking about. So perhaps we can have a chat in the session about those types of things.
Well, the problem is the cost of it.
Well, I know, they want
Yeah.
to put it on the builder, and the builder always wants.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know.
I have kind of just one more comment, and I know we need to move on, but it concerns me that NERC is coming out with a density to five units per acre. Many of us moved to Northwest Indiana, and many of our communities, as you pointed out, have much lower density ordinances in place. And I guess it troubles me that we're coming out as a group of communities. I mean, all the commissioners are from all the towns and cities in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah, that's one of the problems, we don't have all the commissioners.
Yeah, but the question I'm asking is before we reach this conclusion that we would recommend higher density, did we survey any of the commissioners?
The 5 year, that we still offering, like the people work that build in 1 acre. But again, it won't be within the urbanized, like high density area, which has the jobs, and we can afford that. Some communities, even they don't have the lands to build within their communities. You have to go outside, or you have to go to other community like St. John, Cedar Lake, Lowell. That's to find the land that you can build 1 acre. So we still make a recommendation for that. But again, if we're going with the same trends, like we gotta spend more money because of the sprawl, because of the extending roads, because of adding schools, adding services, fire, police, and the communities, the local communities has to understand that, like I think they are the one making decisions. So now when I looked at the Notre Dame and Gary plan, they make a lot of recommendations now to changing the zoning to meet and to be able to build these high density small houses. So it's certain community, they still have to go with the high density, and some other community, they choose to be a low density, and that's something, we have the mix.
And if I can just jump in here and make one clarification. The recommendation is not that all development everywhere be implemented at 5 units per acre. That's taking the entire regional sort of average. And as Eman was saying, there are certain areas that are higher density, certain areas that are lower density. But for the overall regional analysis, it evens out to 5 units per acre. Yeah. So the land use and housing chapter of the NWI 2050 Plus, our long-range plan, identifies different development areas in a sense. And so the density varies based on the overall context of that particular area. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's again, I'm going back to this one, and it's showing here, we're still building a very low density, about 10,000 units in the next, and people can choose that. And you can look at the graphs here. This is the low density area. The people choose to have that. We're still offering that. It was more before. It was like over like 40% or 30%. So they still have the choices. And we don't have actually, as I mentioned, aggressive growth. So we cannot keep building, and we don't have that much growth within our area.
Okay. Thank you very much, man.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda is, under economy, is Henry King.
Just to give a brief,
Anything else? Or you're switching to, okay.
just to give a brief overview of where we are in the SEDS update process, and then I'm going to turn it over to Annie. During early November and early December, we had 2 working group meetings. These working group meetings were open to the committee as a whole, as well as other stakeholders that expressed interest. We had a lot of detailed discussion about industry clusters, a lot of which Annie will overview with more detail. In addition, we conducted 3 in-person community engagement sessions, 1 in each county, as well as a virtual one, and Annie will recap the SWOT analysis that came from that. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Annie. And we have Indranil on the speaker, and he'll also be helping with this information presentation.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Let me print my slides really quick. Good morning, everyone. Because we are short on time somewhat, I want to give a very brief overview. Okay, yes, very brief overview of where we're at in the process. And then we're going to go into kind of a deep data dive on 4 clusters, and we'll also talk about quantum within that. It's on time. So, okay, let me see if I can get this to work. Back and forth. Okay, yes. Okay, and I will be moving the slides forward for Indranil, and that way we can kind of sync up. So just to recap, we had public engagement sessions. I will quickly discuss the SWOT analysis. We'll also discuss quantum and aspirational clusters, and then because of the issue of time, we want to dive into the 4 clusters that we have. We're going to begin with chemicals, go to,
Glass and ceramics.
glass and ceramics, we have machinery, and primary metal. Primary metal, okay. So just to recap, we had 3 in-person engagements, 1 virtual. We had 86 registrations, 42 attendees. These are the participating organizations that attended across all 4 of our sessions. And all of this will be made available to you on your website. So to recap the strengths, these are the top 5 strengths that came out from all of the sessions, and we put them here and we grouped them as global, national, state, or local, regional. I'm happy to answer questions for any of these, and again, these will be put on your website, but because of the issue of time, I kind of want to go through these very quickly. And these are the weaknesses. None of these were really surprising across all of any of the SWOT analysis categories. These are the opportunities. And all of these really do kind of intersect with some of the industry clusters and the information that we're coming across as well. And rezoning for housing development segues nicely with Iman's presentation about housing. And also the threats. So, for example, economic diversification came up. I think there was the perception that there's a lack of economic diversification in the region, and just some general global, national, and also state threats. Okay, this is what the SWOT analysis looks put together, looks like when it's all together, and this will fit into the SEDS document. Okay, so I'm going to skip quickly to the quantum industries. We had a look across the information that is currently available, and these are within the Chicago Quantum Exchange that is being funded currently with the Block Tech grant and also the NSF Engines grant. They have a research foci, and these are the different areas that they currently have 200 scientists and engineers working on at the University of Chicago, where this is primarily based. And so when we think about industries, we have to think about that these are the areas that they're generally going to grow out of. And these are very high tech and very world leading. Okay, so out of this cluster, Illinois adopted a quantum strategy in 2024. They are going to be investing $500 million into an initiative to support the ambition. And of course, there's 30,000 jobs that they hope will come out of it. The Block Quantum Tech Hub was launched in 2023. There's the Quantum Corridor. That's Indiana's only member, and it is a partnership model. And I'm looking into that currently, looking at that kind of pipeline of where it's planned to go, and it looks like it goes all the way to Crane and intersects with the defense industries there. And then there is the NSF Engines Innovation Award, which is $1 million to focus on Illinois and Wisconsin only. They just had listening groups within those 2 states. And then there was the READY grant that also worked with Hammond and some of the commercialization processes that are going to go on within Northwest Indiana. Okay, and I also wanted to bring this up. This is from the Bluff Tech Grant proposal, and this is what is actually what they're hoping to come out of it. And this was an EDA grant that they received $500,000 for. It's one of the items is to create a multi-state community college-based KIST system. So quantum industries and industry-led curricular training and employment pathways. The state of Colorado has just launched theirs a few months ago. They're a little bit further ahead than Illinois and also us in Indiana, but just by 2-3 years. So these are, goals that Northwest Indiana and also the Chicago region can look at further down the road. Okay, with that said, I'm going to quickly change over to Indranil, and I'm going to get up glass and ceramics. Indranil, are you there? Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm going with chemicals.
Yes, chemicals, please.
Okay, one moment, let me sync. Okay, have these ready to go. Okay. So Indranil, we're on the first slide for chemical and chemical-based. Can everyone hear him?
Glass and ceramics.
Oh, I'm sorry, Indranil, hang on. I accidentally put in glass and ceramics into the slide.
Just a little background. From the working groups, there were 3 star clusters.
Yes.
That the location quotients were high enough that they moved into that category. That was glass and ceramics, chemicals, and machinery manufacturing. Then there was one mature cluster, which was primary metals, that also had a high location quotient. So that's what part of this deep dive into the existing data is going to do. And then we also identified aspirational clusters, which are a little bit more difficult to have the same kind of data available, because it just isn't quite available yet.
No, we don't have any. You'll see the information that we have for all the clusters, and because these are such emerging industries, that's simply not available currently. But what we'll need to do at the end of these presentations on this data is kind of, I guess, ratify the selections that are going to go into the sets. Okay. Okay, Indranil, let's see, let me try to increase the volume here.
Yes, so Annie, I can only see your presentation first slide on my screen.
That's right, I'm syncing them.
Okay.
Yes, so we're at the chemicals key economic indicators. Is that what you see?
No, I'm not. I'm just seeing your economy and place working group.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me switch that for you. Okay, you should be able to see it now?
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay.
Yeah, so afternoon everyone, and everyone can hear me, Annie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to join online. I have back-to-back commitments. So as Janari and Annie has explained, we identified 4 industry clusters which were competitive for the region. So either they were star clusters or they were mature, but basically it meant that these 4 clusters have some level of export capacity and can shore up the economy, the regional economy. And that based on that, we have a process of doing a deeper dive into each of the clusters. So there are 4 separate data reports. I will go with chemicals a little bit in detail and then maybe for time, for other clusters, we will just discuss the snippets. So each cluster is actually comprised of different kinds of industry sectors. So we need to know which industries are actually driving each of these star or mature cluster. So in this slide, you can see that there are actually 68 industry sectors in chemical-based cluster. That's the cluster definition. Of course, not every region in the US may have all these industry sectors, and that's why these cluster configurations become unique for the region. Now, just by looking at these numbers, chemical cluster is very important for NIPSI, right? So look at the gross regional product. We are talking of $2.3 billion, and not a small amount. And then the productivity of this cluster is also very strong. So GRP per job is about more than 380,000 per worker. That's also a strong metric. Now what happens is whenever a cluster is present in a region, to produce for production, they need to have some input supplies, and in this case, the total purchase for chemical cluster is about $1.8 billion. And then look at the 2 percentage point below that. So when it says imported from outside of region and state, those are known as economic leakages, which is about 63%. So you have a cluster which is present in the region, and there are economic metrics which shows that it is competitive. The cluster is adding a lot to the regional economy. The workers are productive, but at the same time, when you look into the supply chain or input part of the cluster, we can immediately see there is an opportunity. So 63% of this close to $1.8 billion input to that cluster is actually leaking out, and that's why we call this economic leakage strategy, or thinking about the supply chain strategy to further strengthen the cluster. So the entire presentation will be divided into 2 parts. We are either talking from the perspective of increasing the exports or market opportunities, or vice versa, we are trying to close the gap or close the economic leakages so that this regional demand actually gets circulated within the region, and we do not want other regions to fulfill this demand. Okay, and we will dig deeper, a little bit deeper into this. Next slide, please, Annie. Okay. And this is just a bubble diagram, a major configuration of at the 3-digit level. What exactly is happening is, when I said 68 sector, that is at the next 6-digit level. But very broadly, this cluster is divided into chemical manufacturing, and then few other, plastics and all those things. Yeah, let's continue, Annie, please. Go ahead. Now, this graphic, because the next slide has a lot of data, this graphic explains what exactly, that those data are calculated. So there was a mention that, location quotient is strong, but location quotient is a broader indicator. It gives the first cut to knowing whether the clusters are competitive and export oriented. And then comes the shift share analysis, and there is a way to do it where we tease out the national growth effect, the industry mix effect, and then finally what exactly is the regional competitive effect. So there is a mathematical way to tease out that, but basically it is done to know which particular industry sectors are driving the chemical cluster in the NIPSI region. So next slide, please, Annie. So as I mentioned, this slide has a lot of data. So bear with me. All you need to look into is the last column, which is the column D minus C. Here it says the last column, and there are some arrows there, there are some numbers there, there are some metrics which are positive and negative. If that number is positive, if the regional performance indicator, or what is also known as competitive shift, is positive, it means that the region, NIPSI region, has some specific competitive capacity in that industry sector. So in this case, unlaminated plastics, film and sheet, means we are talking of what, 760 jobs, but the regional performance metric is plus 162. That's a very positive aspect. That's a very positive indicator that this industry is strong. And why it is strong, let me explain this with the first row. So there are 760 jobs in the region. This data is based on, changes from 2018 to 2023. So if we had followed the national growth only, 57 jobs would have increased in the region. However, if we look into that particular industry nationally, which is unlaminated plastics film, the jobs should have decreased. NIPSI should have lost, 118 jobs. So the cumulative change should have been a loss of 60 jobs. Instead, NIPSI gained 102 jobs, and that's what it is. So it is 162 jobs, which actually for the regional performance, but basically it is saying that in this sector, NIPSI has the capacity to counter the national trend. Now, why it happens? Every region has, some sort of unique competitive advantage for a particular industry sector. It can be your labor skills, it can be raw material, it can be your transportation and logistics, it can be your supply chains, stronger supply chains within the sector. But, just looking at this slide, there are a bunch of sectors which are positive and strong in chemical cluster, and these are the driving industry sectors which are actually responsible for making chemical cluster competitive. Next slide, Andy. And this is just a simple graphic of that, right? The table becomes a lot. So if it is green arrow, that means these industries have been outperforming, they have been countering, negative national effect, negative industry effect, and all those things. And, and industries in the red arrow, these are underperforming. So if you want to pursue a chemical cluster strategy, then, these green arrow industries are something to think about. And this is just a graphic. Some people, they like to understand more from graphic than the table. And this is just a representation of that. And next slide, Annie. Okay, so I was talking about, the economic leakage and that large number, right? So in an economic input-output table, when we parse it by cluster, parse it by region, there can be hundreds and hundreds of industry sectors from where, the cluster is obtaining some supply inputs. And here we are only targeting on the top 15 because that's where the large numbers are. So for example, plastic material and resin manufacturing, there is like $157 million demand. It was the demand for 2023 for chemical cluster, and about 82% got leaked out. So 82% of $157 million demand. Now that is something to think about. That's not a small number. And so maybe plastics material and resin manufacturing might have an opportunity, right? So this is one aspect of looking into the economic leakages. So there are some robust numbers here in terms of large dollar value demand in some of the sectors, within the chemical cluster. And if the cluster is competitive, I think thinking about some economic leakage strategy, how to close that gap is advisable. Next slide. And this is just a graphic of the table. So if the larger those orange bars are, the more leakage it is. It is just a graphical glimpse that just within the top 15 sectors, within the top 15 leaking sectors for chemical cluster, there are some sectors where leakages are happening, quite a bit. And there is a bullet point related, where are some of those strong leakage sectors are. So like all other basic organic chemical has quite a bit. Plastics, material and resin has quite a bit. Now, corporate subsidiary and regional managing offices, every region and every cluster will have a leakage there because of course, these industries, the headquarters are usually located somewhere else. Means we cannot do a whole lot of those, but for other kinds of industry sectors, it is worthwhile to think something in that direction. Next slide, Annie. Okay, so here, this is almost like our thing. So when we look into a shift share analysis, when we look into the economic leakage, and then we say, okay, what is going on? So plastics, material and resin had a strong leakage. Is it positive competitive shift? Yes. What was the leakage? $129 million. Now, that is basically saying that there is a $129 million sales demand within the region which is leaking out. So what happens if you think, how to close this gap? What it means economically is, in this case, if you gain, if you increase that $10 million sales within the region, right? You keep that $10 million sales within the region, you can add 22 jobs to the regional economy, correct? Similarly, all other basic organic chemical manufacturing, very competitive. There is a leakage going on, and we are talking of 21 jobs, per $10 million sales. So the last circle, the metric are the same. And this is just giving you the idea, how many jobs. So imagine, even if you 10%, 15%, 20%, if these economic leakages are closed, it can result into job growth. And then finally, it's chemical. This was the surprising one, pharmaceutical preparation manufacturing. Not currently a small sector, but growing and very, very competitive in the region. So something, it was standing out for us in the data, right? So plus 258 in the competitive shift. Currently there is a leakage going on and really strong job growth potential, right? Every $10 million sales can add to 27 jobs in the regional economy. Now, and you understand that these jobs are different because the employment multiplier and sales multiplier of these industry sectors are unique, right? For the region, in the NIPSI region. So we are running, for the last set of circles, we are actually running the economic input-output models to get these numbers. Now, this, within chemical cluster, if the committee agrees, means, pharmaceutical preparation manufacturing is something to really think about. So you are really strong in the competitive shift and, equally strong in the multiplier side. And the industry, this particular industry is currently small, but competitive and growing in the region. Next slide, please, Annie. Okay, so now, we look into the chemical clusters from the industry side, right? We look into the supply chain side. This particular data is on the occupations or workforce that are working within the cluster, the top workforce, right? So if you look into this fourth column, which is percent of total jobs in the cluster, essentially the chemical industries which are there, like miscellaneous assemblers and fabricators, they are about 5% of that cluster job, and including some of the transportation occupations are also listed here, and some of the medium skill. So this table has jobs, what happened, whether that occupation is growing or declining. So for example, chemical equipment operators and tenders had a 374% growth from 2018 to 2023, right? This particular occupation. That means it is growing fast. It is about 4.4% of the entire cluster job. Really high median hourly income, entry level education. So that means it is more on the job related training. But we have also included a set of indicator in the last column, which is known as automation. So what you will see in most of the cases in the cluster, in the top proportion of the workforce is they are usually low skill, medium skill, or medium to high skill. Means we have the entire staffing pattern of the cluster, but it is difficult to present all the data at the same time. In the last column, automation, what it shows is if that index is 100 or above, it is likely within the next decade or so, that occupation and that set of work and skills and all those things, there is a chance, there is a probability that it can be automated. So higher this number is, there is a higher probability it can get automated. And if it is lower than 100, that means it is difficult to automate that job. And one of that example is first line supervisors of production and operating workers. Okay, so this is showing you the occupational side. We can dig further detail. Now you might be wondering that why only medium skills are appearing here. Is because the higher skill, as you saw in the pharmaceutical preparation, will require higher skill. Those have currently less number of jobs, right? It's a smaller and smaller industry sector. Next slide, please, Andy. So this is the worker demographics of all the labor force which is currently engaged in chemical cluster in the NIPSI region. And this age group is an important one, the age group distribution. So currently about 26% of workers are in the mature category, which is like 55 plus and higher years of age. And in contrast, the younger age worker is about only 6%, and then there is a large chunk which are in the prime age worker. Now this slide should force us to think that if we want to pursue, if the region there is opportunity for chemical cluster to retain it, to expand it further, to keep it competitive, that talent pipeline strategy, thinking about human capital is certainly needed. And then there are some matrix about what is the gender classification here, gender distribution of the worker, and then also the race and ethnicity. This at least chemical is much more diverse than those clusters that we look into it. But this demographic is only for the workers that are engaged within the chemical cluster in the NIPSI region. Next slide, Annie. Okay, so we analyzed the economic data and the workforce data that is coming from the Department of Labor and Bureau of Labor Statistics and and of course using our labor market models and all those. So there were some economic modeling involved previously. Now, before I proceed here, Annie, is there any question from the committee?
I don't see any currently. Are we good to continue?
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
So this set of slides are about job postings and focusing on the real-time labor market information that is happening within the chemical cluster. So at PCRD, we have the capacity to really drill down into cluster from different perspectives. And in this set of data, we are actually focusing from January 2020 and onwards, month by month basis, right? Because, clusters have been impacted by pandemic, impacted by COVID, and because we process a lot of data and we see all these things happening in the region, and different clusters are, coming back, recovering back at different capacity and different rate. So, Annie, please. So what is happening is between Jan 2020 and November 2024, right? So this is real-time labor market information. So just last month or 1.5 months ago, what was going on. So we are looking into more than 3,600 unique job postings that happened, right? So unique job posting means actual mutually exclusive job posting, right? So if a job position comes in, there can be multiple posting in different sources. So our economic model, it parts that data out, it only focuses on the data we present here, it is only a unique posting, right? In this duration, what has happened is the median posting duration is about 28 days. So means almost 50% of the employer had to wait for 28 days before they could fulfill that position. So if this is lower, that is good, because labor market is churning. If it is higher, that means employers are struggling getting the labor. And the posting intensity is 3:1. If this ratio is higher, and in this case it is higher because the regional average is about 2:1. That means employer are posting for each job at the minimum 3 times or more before they can get the position filled. The percentage change was really good, and there are 188 employers in the region which kind of posted job in the chemical cluster grouping of industries. Median hourly is about 23% of posting had the salaries posted, so median hourly was about $26 per hour, and the chemical cluster means the different industries which are part of the chemical cluster, they were posting for the job. So industrial gas manufacturing, pharmaceutical preparation, so this particular sector is coming back again. So paint and coating manufacturing, other allied merchant wholesalers are coming, and then plastics. And then there are some, last bullet point also has some companies, the major companies which actually posted for the job. Next slide, Annie. Now this is the month by month data. So the red line here is month by month profile of what unique postings were happening. Of course, we all know that Jan and March, 2020 was US was in recession. Now it is recognized by National Bureau of Economic Research that we were technically in recession during the lockdown. That quarter, the economic growth rate really became negative. But then, of course, the entire economy was locked down. But after that, there has been a progressive increase in the unique postings, in the job posting, and of course there are some cyclical and seasonal effect, right? These are time series data, and we were just, we just test those things by fitting some curve, looking into the R square, very decent R square, 0.8, 0.7. That shows that, progressively, the job postings, there is a growth trend for job postings. It can change month to month, but overall, chemical cluster job postings there is a demand, right? There is a labor demand. Next slide, and so we looked into, last 1 year and then last 1 month. Which particular sector was actually posting most jobs. And as I mentioned, this is a real-time labor market information. We find surprisingly it is industrial gas manufacturing, which is the top one. So after COVID, it is the top one which has been most active in posting jobs, and we are talking of unique job posting, so which is really interesting. That means another one to consider as part of your chemical cluster strategy. Although it had negative job growth and competitive shift from 2018 to 2023, but the labor market in 2024 has been really positive, right? So we use this real-time labor market information because the economy data is usually lagged by 1 year and 2 years, and this is showing that whatever had happened in 2018 to 2023 period, in 2024, this industry is coming out really, really strong. Yeah, next slide, Annie. And then, this is just a summary of, what are a table of, which top companies are posting for the jobs in the chemical cluster, which top industries are posting for the jobs. And then next slide. This is easy slide, and then comes the economic outlook. So this is based on our own observation of, there are some stronger, I will say, industry sectors in the chemical cluster, and we were accessing data from our management school databases to know what kind of economic outlook are we talking about. So I mentioned about pharmaceutical, which is emerging strong. We saw that very strong economic matrix, although smaller industry currently in Leipzig. But the US, this particular contract pharmaceutical research services has a very strong economic outlook for the US. It has performed really strong. The profit margins are high, but but then the industries need to think. Because they follow these strict FDA regulatory environment. This is one particular area which really uses specialized knowledge, and then comes generic pharmaceutical manufacturing, another strong one area, very high competition, but then also high revenue per employee. And our feeling is this is one area which can be looked into, is because of the Indiana's recently launched the tech hub, which is known as Heartland Bioworks. PCRD is involved in this initiative. In fact, the official launch is tomorrow, and some of our staff are attending that. PCRD is involved from the evaluation perspective, but one of the major aspects of this bioworks is to strengthen the contract research, the capacity for pharmaceutical research services and pharmaceutical manufacturing in Indiana. So the initiative is actually looking into entire Indiana. It's a 5-year initiative. So maybe in the sets, if you mention that maybe pharmaceutical is the area, because whatever industries you have there is strong, and they are in the top one posting for jobs. Of course, it will require some specialized knowledge, specialized talent, so the universities will have to ramp up, but there is an opportunity to tie up and have some synergies with the Tech Hub initiative, which is going to be launched soon. And then, the traditional chemical manufacturing, organic chemical manufacturing, plastics, material, and resins, they have been stronger in the US, and chemical will always be in demand. Of all the engineering and of all the technology and manufacturing, usually chemical manufacturing have a higher wage jobs, but we also need to understand that some of them, like plastics material, may have the stiff environmental regulations, and the traditional manufacturing may get impacted by tariff, right? So I think this completes the discussion or presentation on chemicals, and I think I talked quite a while. Any questions, anything before we can share some snippets? I think depending on the data, the data that is there and time, I think for other clusters we can just go a bit fast and just looking into some major salient features for those clusters. Knowing, go ahead.
I just think that it's important to maybe add to that chemical cluster opportunity sheet, the SynBioMed consortium that's working out of Northwestern. They've asked to get more engaged with Indiana around opportunities, and they're really diving into synthetic biology as well as AI, and working along that same pharmaceutical vein, and are going for some NSF funding, but have been given federal funding and are trying to reach across the state lines to be able to drive more regional change across that. So maybe a good thing to add on to that.
Are there some resource information?
I'll send you over
Okay.
the information.
Okay, what
Any
about,
questions? Go ahead.
any other questions?
I was
Yes,
curious,
Gary.
how many of, for example, the gas production here, how many of these are tied directly to the steel industry?
Of the chemical,
Yeah.
did you hear that, Indranil?
Yeah, so if they are tied with steel, and that is a particular question, we can dig into the data and look into it. And it should be tied, it should appear somewhere in the supply chain. So please understand, if you have question, we have the full detailed data available. In the slides, we are only presenting the top ones, right? The top sectors and all those things. So yes, we can answer, but we will have to check. And one more thing I will suggest is, a lot of these are economic models. So these are estimates, but they are generally good. We have been using it for different regions and working with these modeling agencies for now close to 20 years. So, and improving their techniques also in the process. Yes, Annie, please note that question, and we should be able to inform exactly, the industrial gas as part of, the steel manufacturing.
So you touched on petrochemicals in your listing. Is BP included in there?
Yes, petrochemical and all those things, and business-wise, yes. And Andy, did we share the business listing, right? Because we can download that data for these clusters. Did we share that previously with the committee?
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw it. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think BP is in there, and it showed a refining, like 22.6% or whatever it was of refining imports, and it would seem to me that if BP is included that we would be a net exporter. But just an observation on the data.
So so the establishment data is coming from private sources. That is one challenge, and that's why we always share that data with the local and regional committee, because they know, what exactly industries are located there. Okay. So as I mentioned, that we are using a mix of data to provide a picture. But yes, any suggestions and any things in the data and anything, please let us know. And we will make adjustments related to that. So going forward, the chemicals and glass and ceramics they overlap in terms of cluster definition. glass and ceramics is actually a smaller cluster, and because I explained chemicals in a really detailed manner, I think you will get these reports. You can take a look into the glass and ceramics. And our cluster definitions, by nature, they overlap, so they share some of the sectors. And that's why I think Annie has put here, primary metals, which is another powerhouse, but there are some economic trends which we should discuss. So Annie, please, let's proceed.
Okay, should we start here?
Yes, yeah, we can
Okay.
start here. So, lot of jobs in 2023, but the jobs are declining. The average total earnings are still high, but still, even though the jobs decline, what happens is the location quotient still comes out positive and really, really large. Is the reason is because the rest of the US is really falling behind. So the concentration of jobs in Nipsey with close to 16,000 jobs, related jobs in this primary metal cluster, it still makes it, I think location quotient was 22. One of the really high location quotient values I have seen. I process a lot of data for different regions in the US. So just by the sheer magnitude and concentration, there is a very strong competitiveness present. Second, GRP for primary metal is very, very high. Means we are talking $8 billion here, right? Imagine chemical was like close to $2 billion, very strong. The GRP, the productivity, is $500,000 per worker. These are very strong economic metric. Yes, the industry has been changing its nature. There are a lot of global changes and policy changes and all those things. But in terms of economic metric, this is like really significant. Now total purchase is $14 billion for this industry. Almost half of it is leaking out, right? But just as I mentioned, we are talking of this really large economic footprint when we talk about primary metals in the Nipsey region. Next slide, and we will just skip this for this is just at the 4-digit level how the jobs are distributed. Of course, the steel mills and all those things, they are there. Let us skip it. Annie, this graphic, we have talked about it previously. So and this is where the situation starts coming, right? Iron, steel mill, and ferroalloy is, we are talking of 13,000 jobs and all those things. The shift share has been negative. Of course, this particular industry sector has taken a hit nationally, and so location quotient, the overall cluster very strong. But that specific industry has taken a hit does not mean we cannot include it in the strategy, because just the magnitude, because it is providing so many jobs. Other than that, the foundries, smelting, refining, both kinds of foundries, and they are positive, they are strong. So there is a set of industry sectors within this primary metal which are competitive in the region, right? So next slide. One more thing. This, aluminium rolling, drawing, extruding, steel wire drawing, if it shows insufficient data, that means in 2018 the region these industries were not existing, and then they emerged. So if you have example of these kinds of emerging industry, that is also one aspect to look into it, because those can be the target industry sectors for the region as well. Next slide, Annie. Okay, same way, green arrows, we recommend, look into the green arrows, industries which are part of the green arrow. So for your primary metal strategy, you can focus it there. So the red arrow may not be, but still there is some value in, considering the mills and the ferroalloy manufacturing. Although, the ship share currently is negative, but as I mentioned, economic data lags. So we were only talking about until 2023 what was happening. Next slide, Annie. All right. Now this is where it becomes interesting in the sense that in case of chemicals, there were large leakages. In case of primary metal, the inputs are really large, but then the regional capacity to fulfill those is also very, very strong. Except, some of the mining related sectors. Now, our supply chain and input-output table, they are kind of pulling this data out, but by no means we are expert in the primary metal industry to really understand, the supply chain of it. But in this case, some regional knowledge of what is happening within this industry, this larger industry group will be useful. But iron and steel mills might have taken a hit, but it has a demand, it has an input for almost $2.8 billion, and it is able to fulfill 97% within the region. That's a very strong indicator, right? It means it has been able to retain, those much of demand, fulfill those much of demand within it. Rail transportation, let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry, my computer lost power.
Yeah, it's probably set us.
Get back up.
I think this answers the question very, in the top 50 industries, the primary.
Please give a question.
Refinery.
If you could, Chair would like to have you address the whole group, because we can't hear you, and
Oh,
I
sorry
can.
about that. Gary had previously asked a question about how much of the petrochemical manufacturing purchases were by the steel industry. But this suggests that petrochemicals isn't even one of the top 5 industries.
No, actually, I was concerned about the gas production, industrial gas production.
Oh, okay.
That was my question, which I think
Also
lots of that. Well, but I think a lot of industrial gas production is consumed by the steel industry, which is why the industrial gas production is located here at all.
But this would suggest that it's not.
Well, I would
At least
challenge
not
the
top
data.
15.
I mean, just, having lived here and observed it.
While we have a break in the action, I'd like to identify, is anybody from Michigan City here? Anyway, I'd like to compliment and congratulate Michigan City on the, after many delays from 2022, I think it was, the $240 million project on the lake. It has now been agreed to that it will be commencing at a cost of about $311 million for a tower project slated to transform the lakefront. And they're poised to be
Okay.
the name of the project is SOLA for South Lake County. Gary, do you have any more information?
No, not really. I think it's south of the lake.
South
It's
of
not
the
going
lake.
on to the
Yeah.
owl in
No, I don't have any other information. It sounds really exciting.
Well, there's an article in the newspaper and a rendering, and I have the article here
Yes.
because I wanted to make note of the.
Let's try
I think
this.
it's an exceptional project and tying in
Oh,
with all
that's-
the different infrastructure things that we've done over the last number of years. with
Oh, hi,
the
Andrea.
double
Hang on
tracking
one
in
second.
Chicago and South Bend. And there's also amazing things happening currently around the airport to tie in a lot of these things. And
I don't think it's coming through the owl, which is the problem.
Conference that there's going to be money coming into Indiana among other states in the billions of dollars.
Yes, but it's not coming
There's a
in
lot of
like
things going
the
on
whole work
that,
for the whole room.
I think we need to keep
Where
our eyes
is
open, and we also need to have our county
I have
people that unincorporated areas
this hooking
to be able
into,
to
that's the
be
long,
prepared for whatever might be happening in the
Yeah.
future, if in fact that's what
that should
happens.
be with the L.
But, you know, we've heard a lot of things in the past too, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it's here, it's here. Any other comments while we're waiting for the, for our infrastructure to be put?
Well, as long as we have a moment, one of my really big concerns about our region is that the steel industry here is very likely to die unless something dramatically changes.
Especially after some announcements recently.
Well, no, I mean, it's not about acquisitions. I mean, I think that actually might have been a good deal.
Yes.
But it's the conversion to electric arc furnaces.
Okay.
That's the really big deal. All of the new capacity in the world, or in the United States anyway, that's been built in the last several
share the
decades
presentation with
is
you.
electric arc furnaces. And whereas both Nippon and Cleveland Cliffs are talking about investing hundreds of millions of dollars to reline blast furnaces, which is just perpetuating an increasingly obsolete technology. And
I've heard that as well, but I mean, I've heard arguments on both sides.
I don't think there's an argument for the preservation
Well,
of blast furnaces.
I'm not one to,
Yeah, to tell you
not
the
one to
truth.
report that.
No, I've not heard, just my own technical judgment is that there's not a reasonable argument for the preservation of blast furnaces today with the introduction of direct reduced iron into electric arc furnaces.
And all I'm saying is I've heard different things. I am no expert by any means.
Anyway, so,
Anyone else have any
well,
comments?
just one final comment. So
Okay.
it really worries me whenever we think about industry cluster development that has anything to do with the steel industry in the region, because I think we need to come to grips in our economic planning that that's declining, which we saw in the overall job change.
I think we're back and running.
Yes.
Okay. Tally ho, away we go.
Apologies
Take it away.
for that. Okay.
Okay. And you can hear me?
Can everyone hear Indranil? Yes. Okay, go ahead. You're on the leakage
Yeah.
analysis.
Let's go to the next slide chart, because we are reaching 10 minutes here. Yeah. Can we go to the chart? Next slide.
We're on the this one.
No, this is correct. After that, just the graphic. Slide 9. Slide 9. Yes. Yeah. So this is just a representation of the table here, and so currently the cluster has the capacity to handle its economic demand internally. Can you hear me?
Neil, did we lose you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, this is a traditional industry cluster capable of fulfilling its demand. But then there are certain sectors, the bars look small, but if you look into the axis, we are talking of, close to $1 billion, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's go to the next slide, Annie, please. Number 10.
Yeah, one moment. I'm happy. There's a delay, it seems like, when I shift it for you.
Yeah.
We're on 10.
Yeah. Okay. Let me talk about 10. Yeah. I don't see 10. I think it's frozen at 9. That's okay.
Yeah, we have it up here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, let me talk about 10. So what has happened is, what we found in this particular cluster is some sectors were strong competitively, but some sectors were not. Annie, there is difficulty in the sound.
And,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, some sectors were strong competitive wise, and there was like quite a few leakages, and that's why we did this input-output model. And at the same time, some sectors, the competitive shift never existed, but because the leakages were high, they were supplying to the primary metal, still we ran, the input-output model. So this durable goods merchant wholesaler, so I mean, this was part of the definition. So it has, plus 18 competitive shift, a very large cluster leakage. But this is wholesale industry, right? It ties also to logistics and all those things. A $10 million sale can result into 96 jobs for the region. Just the magnitude of it, right? Versus, if it says 0 or competitive shift does not exist, that means, based on the data, it was basically the industry is simply following the national trend, nothing special for the region, but the leakage is very high, and then 23 jobs per $10 million sale. Iron foundries are very strong, plus 41 in competitive shift. Leakage is also fairly high, and 42 jobs per $10 million sale. So this is just a glimpse of the competitive shift, leakage and multiplier. This durable goods merchant wholesaler has a very high multiplier we are talking about. Next slide, Annie, please.
Okay. We're on slide 11.
Okay. Yeah, it is frozen, so I am just talking from the PowerPoint at my computer.
Yeah.
So, top occupations here, again, you will see the top ones, almost 16% are, metal refining, furnace operator and tenders, which is fine, is currently about 2,500 jobs. This particular occupation has been growing, but, automation is, 117. So this is almost, we will see with all the medium skill, industry, machinery, mechanic, again more than 100 automation. So we should tell, this automation index is something which is more in future, but it is just an indicator that eventually there is a capacity for machine learning, AI and robotics to replace those tasks and skills. Next slide, Andy.
Okay.
And in terms of worker demographic, this chart, the age group chart, is also something to think about. 28% in mature worker category. The young age worker is really small proportion. Young age, new talent, they do not want to go into these kinds of traditional cluster industry, and that is something that should be think about. The younger worker, what are their aspirations, and these are actually the traditional industries. But basically the chart indicates that there are some pressures in the labor market. Annie, let us go to job postings, labor demand.
Okay. Okay, I'm
So-
on slide
40,
40.
40, right? So the bullet points, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, if we contrast this slide with chemical cluster, of course, there are unique job postings that are happening in primary metal, but certainly not as active as we saw in the chemical side, right? The median posting duration is lesser. The posting intensity is 2:1, which is close to the regional average. Definitely, there has been some growth since January 2020 in the unique posting demand, and the jobs are getting advertised, but they are getting advertised by iron and steel mills and ferroalloy and iron foundries. These are the two major ones, and then there are some company names listed here which had posted jobs in the region. Annie, please, next slide. The chart.
Okay, I'm there.
Yeah, so here the fluctuation is quite a bit, right? For the unique job postings month by month, and when we try to put some graphs to it, the R square values are less, right? So there has been fluctuation. It's not only seasonal, but certainly the trend in the job posting, the labor market is not as high as the chemical. You saw that this trend is much more tempered and lower. Next slide, Annie.
Okay.
So in the last, from October to November 2024, and in the 12-month period, November 2023 to November 2024, the industry which was highest or active in posting job was iron and steel mills and ferroalloy in both the cases. Similar to chemical. So in terms of this is basically the steel mills which are basically dominating the job posting market here. And in this slide.
Okay.
And then here there are the companies, the top companies which have posted, and some of the top industries. Now please note, the name of the industry, the way you see it may not match with the industry name that you saw in the previous slide. And let me give you a reason. The models that we have, the way it processes job posting data is, it goes every day online, scrapes, about 40,000, 60,000 online job posting, and then, deduplication process is a lot, where the posting can happen on multiple websites. And whatever is listed in the job posting in terms of the name of the industry is what you see in the table. So it may not match with the actual NAICS code, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and DEA classification, which we saw previously, right? So one limitation of this kind of data is it is a labor market information based on labor demand with the postings that are posted online. And you go to slide 19, please.
Okay, I'm on economic outlook.
Yes.
Okay, U.S. industry economic outlook.
Yeah. So we know that the iron and steel manufacturing have been impacted. There have been a pandemic-induced volatility, but still in case of US, at least the databases that we have access to the databases, they say that the revenue and employees are forecast to grow marginally during 2024 to 2029. However, the tariff, trade, and foreign policies can impact this sector. Now, this sector has been really large in the US, $140 billion revenue with some significant profit margin. Ferrous metal, comparatively, although ferrous metal foundry is NIPSEA is strong, it is a smaller proportion in revenue, equally stronger proportion of margin, 7.3%, profit margin. But this also, this also is, dependent on the foreign demand and all those things. So what broadly is at least our observation is for this cluster, it is all about finding new markets and expanding the export capacity, not so much the retail side, because the region is quite a bit self-sufficient if you want to pursue this direction. Now, non-ferrous metal refining was also coming out strong, and then and it's a lower profit margin, but this industry is expected to grow during 2024 and 2029. But please understand that this is one set of cluster which was seriously impacted after the pandemic and post-pandemic, and currently overall it is in the recovery stage. Certainly not as dynamic as the chemicals that we saw previously. So yeah, so this finishes the primary metal. Based on time, I mentioned that glass and ceramics and chemicals are very similar. Annie, maybe we can just quickly discuss the machinery if we want, just the main points for machinery cluster.
Let me bring it up really quick on what they have here.
Yeah, maybe just the last slide of machinery cluster, because
Of the U.S. industry economic outlook.
Yeah, straight away. Yeah. This there is a data to support and generally support, but the last one.
Okay, we're there.
Yes. So the industry gas manufacturing. Industry gas manufacturing came out strong. Remember, in the chemical cluster, right? Surprising, the job aspect, the job posting aspect, labor demand. In this case, in the machinery, air and gas compressor manufacturing, which is the second bullet point. The U.S. economic outlook, again the same thing. It is pandemic, it is in recovery mode. But this particular sector, air and gas compressor manufacturing, conveyor and conveying belt manufacturing, these are stronger, and that's why. So if we have found the industry sector which are driving this cluster in the Nipsey region, or they have come out stronger in the job posting, those are the ones that we are discussing here. Okay. So both and convey and then in other industrial machinery manufacturing, another one which is a diverse sector, but this has also come out stronger for the Nipsey region. So please note that primary metal was mature for Nipsey region, also location quotient was high, but machinery manufacturing has been a star cluster for Nipsey region. So maybe this can give some idea to maybe retain and focus on machinery. And then these are some sectors that can be discussed. That's all, Annie.
Okay. Okay, any questions on primary metals and machinery?
I wonder, since the hour is getting late, if we could condense the rest of the presentation so that we could.
Well, we have. Yeah.
Okay, so we're nearing.
Yes, all we need to do at this point is answer any questions.
Okay, excellent.
And then
Let's move on.
and then ratify.
Just a quick observation on the outlook on the job postings.
Yes.
For primary metals.
For primary metals.
The number one company was Big River Steel.
Yeah.
You know what Big River Steel is?
U.S. Steel?
Electric arc furnaces owned by U.S. Steel.
Okay.
In Arkansas.
Okay.
And so they're advertising in our area to attract employees to a new facility that uses modern technology.
Did you hear that, Indraneel?
Yes, and that's a very good point and good observation.
Thank you,
So
Gary.
this labor market poaching is happening quite a bit. And maybe, the people who are working in the workforce group or work one center and all those things can give some input in that direction. So we need to be very cautious about that. And that's why that demographic chart which we saw for primary metal and all those things, which is based on workers which are currently employed, simply shows that there is a talent pipeline challenge for some of these traditional industries. The young age proportion is very small, and also the young age people may not be going, may not want to go and work in this industry. Second thing, job postings data is not able to capture the 100% of the labor market, and that's why there is a bullet point there is of the analog job. So sometimes chemicals and primary metal, some of the job posting may happen as printouts or the job agencies are informed, or it's by word of mouth and all those things. Those data do not get captured. Now, in case of chemical cluster, there was one particular industry, I cannot inform you the name of that because we are under NDA, from Lipsy region, and they were asking, and that happened maybe 5-6 months ago, they were specifically asking about the talent strategy for chemicals. So yes, the industries in reality are finding difficult to hire workers. Now, the median wage job, the average wages they are increasing that. At least in case of this particular industry, they were rising it up, including the benefits, just to attract and retain workers. So totally agree. When you think about this industry, workforce will be a very important angle to consider.
Okay. Any other observations?
Just as a comment on the workforce issue that you just brought up, we started this whole meeting talking about housing and an hourly wage which would be expected to be able to afford housing of $24 an hour for Gary
Yes.
and a little bit less for the Michigan City area. Of the two clusters that we saw the top occupational listings for, 8 of the 15 have median wages below that number. So a majority of the workers for those industries would be earning less than a livable wage for housing.
Right.
Of the two industries that we've been presented information on. So as a strategy to who we're going to go after, we might want to consider, are people that are working in this industry going to be able to live here even as we attract these industries?
Kind of along the same point, kind of looking at secondary effects, if you will, that one of the observations talked about plastics production. And there's almost no more polluting industry in the country. I mean, look at the Chemical Alley in Louisiana. Raises all kinds of environmental justice issues and so forth. If we look at distribution of metals, that gets us into logistics and trucking, and so you certainly don't want to rebuild the economy around our historical tolerance of pollution.
Agreed, and I think that there's a glaring miss in this. I know you talked about it being tied to international and national wins, but right now we have a sale of one of our largest industrial assets being blocked by the federal government, that if it doesn't go through will likely mean that much of that plant gets shuttered. So, I think that continuing to I think that it's important that we continue to add on these aspirational markets in order to skate where the puck's going. because
the difficulty, if I may, we don't have any of this information for any of the aspirational markets because they're so new.
I
Yeah.
totally understand that. I absolutely get that, but I think that it's somewhat dangerous to put out a report that pins our hopes and dreams to the steel and metals industry.
Heather, I agree with that 100%. To me, a major focus of this should be planning for the steel industry to basically go away in Northwest Indiana. You know, if we look at what happened in the 60s and 70s here with the technical changes of continuous casting, basic oxygen, and so forth, it devastated the industry because of the decline in employment. I mean, people don't think of us being impacted by technological change, but there's almost no region in the country that has been more impacted. And it looks like we're going to be going through that again. That if we look at electric arc furnaces, that is the dominant method of making steel in America today.
Well, is it a possibility for them to reinvent themselves with the electric arc?
If they were to do it, but they're not making those investments here.
Well,
U.S. Steel and ArcelorMittal are both building plants in the South that are based on electric arc furnace technology, and it's no coincidence that ArcelorMittal sold their smelting capacity at Burns Harbor to Cleveland Cliffs, which is heavily invested in taconite and mining, whereas ArcelorMittal is now redeploying their U.S. production into electric arc furnaces in the South.
Well, how do we find a way to encourage them to consider reinventing?
It almost can't be done without significant government intervention. That if you look at the Tata plant in Wales at Port Talbot, that they're converting that entire plant from blast furnaces to electric arc furnaces, with the investment being roughly split of $600 million from Tata and $600 million from the British government. And at the end of it, it will use around half the employees that blast furnaces did.
but they'll get a significantly lower quality grade of steel.
No, they don't, because of direct reduced iron. That using direct reduced iron, electric arc furnaces today are fully competitive quality-wise with blast furnaces. And that technical, you're right, in the past when Nucor was doing it and scrap was the only input, they couldn't compete quality-wise. Today that is completely reversed. And with direct reduced iron, which uses hydrogen in order to reduce the iron, they can be fully competitive.
I think we need to bring this to the attention of some of the politicians.
I have.
Yeah,
Well, let's see if more of us can.
we're having a lot of these conversations at the political level as well, and again, it goes along with the things that we're trying to do around the hydrogen hub and the other aspirational industries that we're looking to grow into in order to evolve the economy. But
I wonder if there's any chance that we could bring into one of these meetings, or some of them.
I also noticed, if I may say, when I was looking at the quantum information, that one thing that seems to be missing here for Indiana is that there isn't an NSF engine driving it here.
Well, there is an NSF engine driving it here. It's the Chicago Quantum Exchange, and
Exactly, but we're not on, Indiana's not participating in all of those activities.
we are.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it.
I'm on a call with them twice a month. We are going to host their meetings. They're giving us
And
funding
where do our local
to be able to host
comprehensive
meetings.
plans come in
Okay.
with this?
So we are.
It's just not listed in the government documents that I'm looking at.
So we're very engaged with
Okay.
those processes. I
Okay.
apologize. We got to run to it. I got
Yeah.
to make
Okay,
this
well,
go
I'm
to
gonna
a
try to
board
bring
meeting.
it to a
We're
vote,
gonna
but
have to get
how
a
can
vote
we,
before we lose it.
in our comprehensive plans, in the local communities, have some impact or bring it into the attention of those comprehensive plans, because I think it's critical. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'm not.
Answer may not be forthcoming immediately, but I think it's something that we should address, and that may be one of the vehicles that may bring it to the attention of the public, and also, get the ear of the politicians who can do something about it.
Annie, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I heard the discussions partially, but maybe one thing, this is just the analysis, right? We are not saying that go with primary method or chemical. If you ask me, within chemical, maybe I will go with pharmaceutical preparation manufacturing. So that way means so in the sense we will not say chemical cluster. We need to analyze everything.
We do have one action if we could have ratification before.
Well, we have to have a simple majority of a 3-person quorum.
Okay.
So as long as we have
All right,
3
you're
voting
good.
members that are
You don't
committee
need-
members, Judith, Gary, Lois, and George, we're good.
Okay, and basically it's officially to say that this is our position, but
What we're trying to do is get our hands around the fact that now we've been presented this deep dive of information. It's revealed some information, both positive and negative. I think there's concern about the mature cluster of primary metals and how much attention that really deserves in the SEDS, as opposed to the aspirational clusters that are more forward-looking and future-looking. I think it was noted that there's concerns about environmental aspects of some of the things associated with chemical and possibly glass and ceramics clusters. I don't know that that came out for machinery
It came out for
manufacturing
distribution because of the logistics part of it.
for the primary metals.
No,
And
for
machinery.
machinery.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's noted too. So I guess what we need to do is to have some consensus that we still are including the 3 star clusters of chemicals, glass and ceramics, and machinery manufacturing, but with some caveats of focusing on the sectors within that we think have less environmental or other negative impacts. Would that be a fair
Well, I
assessment?
think for chemical, we could focus on pharmaceuticals. We could just talk about that within the sentence, because we think that would be a potential growth
okay,
area.
it seems to me that we need to come to a consensus of what we're going to ratify. Is this like the beginning of a working document for further development that this is the basis? Or because obviously there's a lot of questions that I think I have and that Gary has and that probably everyone here. So this is the foundation of something that's going to be developed, become more clear to us.
Well,
rather than
eventually there'll
something
be
cast
a
in
draft,
stone.
but it will be driven by the ratification of, to
Okay,
continue to include the 3 star clusters, give less emphasis to the mature cluster, and continue to find avenues
form of a
to
motion for
incorporate the
ratification.
aspirational clusters.
But isn't there also, and I think this came up in the presentation today, that the glass and ceramics and the chemical clusters have so much overlap that even today we didn't talk about the glass and ceramics cluster very much. And so we could shrink it down to primary metals, chemicals, and machinery.
Yes, you're recognized. I'm sorry, I don't know your
No,
name.
not a problem.
Hey, could you identify yourself, please?
Sean Saloff from Valparaiso University.
Okay, thank you.
So-
I know you did earlier, but I forgot.
Not a problem. So if the focus is for chemicals is just the pharmaceutical manufacturing portion of that, because there's concerns with the other parts, presumably like life and biosciences also contains pharmaceutical manufacturing. Would it make more sense to focus on that as opposed to chemicals to kind of alleviate some of those concerns?
Well,
And enter different concerns that may not be as high level as the
the
chemicals.
biosciences may not include pharmaceuticals, if you looked at that cluster.
Okay, but it could as well. It seems like it may, based on. the
We don't
details.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know.
You know, and given where we're starting from in that cluster, if it's going to focus on research or something like that, it becomes really an aspirational cluster because there's not much of that here. if any.
And it's an area that Indiana wants to focus
It's an area of Indiana focus, but not,
Yeah.
not of our region.
Okay, it's past noon, I don't mean to be cutting off anything, if we want to stay out, I'll
You know,
stay.
one thing I'd like to suggest is
Uh-huh.
that included in this is in our, this is for what, 2050 or 2040 or something like that?
2050
No,
plus.
this
It's
is for 5 years.
5 years.
Well, it's a 5-year plan, but with the.
5-year
2050
plan is that we need,
plan.
that the plan needs to be consistent with continuing employment declines in primary metals.
At what point well
Yes,
taken.
that could-
I would request if you could give us a motion, what we are ratifying specifically, so that we know what we want to do.
Well,
I-
let's take this in a couple little chunks, and Annie chime in here.
Yeah,
Gary, restate your point, let's have that as kind of
Just
one
say that the
motion.
plan be consistent with continuing decline in the primary metals cluster.
we can look at that within the sentence, like, and plan for that.
And that has a lot of implications throughout the other.
So is there consensus to do what Gary has stated, and then we can move
To
beyond?
include
the
that
framework?
with the
That could be
ratification
one
request
area.
for a working group consensus. So that, in other words, that means that it's going to be officially our foundation for.
This is one of several
Several,
things.
right.
So let's deal with what Gary
Okay.
has stated and at least get a
Okay,
vote
well,
on
that's
that.
only a piece of the overall thing that was
Yeah.
presented here, and that's what I'm trying to bring in focus. There is an action requested, ratification of working group consensus and PCRD recommendation, which would be PCRD is the acronym for specifically.
Purdue Center for Regional Development.
Okay.
I think what Daenerys is trying to do is to state it in several bullet points.
Yeah.
With the first bullet point being that the plan be consistent with the decline in the primary metals
Would you
cluster.
like to make the motion so you can?
Well, no, I mean, it's.
No, I mean, you
Well,
may because you're
That's
one
the
of the
first
members.
bullet point, yeah.
Okay, I guess I thought what we were gonna do is see if we had consensus on that, build the other bullet points, and then have a motion to adopt them
Yeah,
all, but I'll leave it
I
up to
think
you to
that's
run the
I think
process.
that's a good strategy. If we could just acknowledge, is there consensus
Okay.
to support what Gary has stated? And I
Are
wasn't
we
able
going
to
to
write it down
take
quickly enough.
a separate vote on each one, or are you going to vote together so we?
Does anyone object? Maybe that.
Does
Yeah,
anybody
that's-
object to what Gary has stated?
Say no objection, moving on to the next point.
Right.
Okay, and so again, this is acknowledging the declining status of the primary metals
That the plan
cluster.
be consistent with the decline in primary metals.
Okay, all right. George, I'm going to continue if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please.
Okay. In terms of the chemical and glass and ceramics clusters, is there consensus that we look for some overlaps? Is that right? Or the pharmacy in the chemical and in the glass and ceramic, or just the?
Oh, so pharmaceuticals classified within the chemical cluster. So I think going forward, whether you're comfortable with us looking at policies that would help push that forward within this region.
Okay, so.
So,
Any objection to,
I'm not sure I understood it, but
okay,
are we able to go back to the U.S. economic outlook under the
Yes,
chemical
yeah,
cluster?
let me
real
do
quick?
that.
that areas that perhaps say, maybe shouldn't be a bullet point, but that we've identified sufficient overlap between glass and ceramics and chemicals that we treat that as a single cluster.
okay, if I may,
Okay.
the way I understood it originally was that there are 4 clusters that you're determining, and that was chemical manufacturing, glass and ceramics, machine metals, and,
So primary metals and machinery are separate.
Yeah,
okay, primary metals and machinery manufacturing.
yeah,
So
primary
there's
metals.
4 bullet points, and to include Gary's comment about considering the decline of
That would be, yeah.
Well, I don't want to argue this point, I just drop it, but we kind of decided there was so much, at least that's what I understood, there was so much overlap between glass and ceramics and chemicals that they could be treated as one cluster. And then we identified pharmaceuticals within that cluster as being something to focus on.
Is that correct, Israel? Is there overlap between pharmaceuticals and glass and ceramics?
No, it's between chemicals.
Chemicals.
Chemicals and glass and ceramics, they share.
Okay, yes,
Okay, so
okay.
there's 3 bullet points.
And
Right,
overall
that's-
within that, pharmacy, if the committee wants, and that's what we're looking at, pharmaceutical, that's what.
Okay, so the second bullet point is to try to merge the overlap between the chemical and glass and ceramic clusters with a focus on those that relate to pharmaceutical related, whether research or manufacturing. So that's like bullet
Right.
point number 2.
Right.
And then let's hit the economic outlet for machinery manufacturing. And then the third is perhaps to incorporate recommendations that could strengthen the machinery manufacturing cluster.
I think specifically we have a pretty strong cluster in Michigan City
Right,
around air and compressors.
right.
And building on that,
All right, so that's the third bullet point, to build on the outlooks that are identified in the machinery manufacturing cluster. And then the fourth one is still a little nebulous, but it's to really, where possible, focus on the aspirational clusters.
right,
And some of the things that were mentioned today related to quantum. There may be things related to biotech, there may be things related to fintech and energy and decarbonization were some of the things. So George, those are kind of the 4 bullet points.
Okay.
And if there's a motion that supports ratifying those 4 bullet points,
so moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. Is there any discussion? There being none.
It's lunchtime.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
okay.
And is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion is ratified.
All right, thank you, Indranil.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on,
Is that mental application about this?
Okay. George, we
Yes.
do not have to have further discussion under 3.5 right now.
okay?
It's kind of been incorporated in your decision on.
Yes, and I have all those
3.4.
notes, so it's good. We're
Okay,
good.
excellent. Now, before we adjourn, the next meeting is a special meeting which is scheduled for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 at 10 a.m. This location, same time, same channel. Man, could you explain further or what the special meeting is going to entail briefly?
It's going to be strictly
Okay, it's
centered.
going to be okay.
Yes, we'll talk about those goals that I've taken notes on and where we are policy-wise on that.
Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for hanging in here. I appreciate it very much. I know that many of you have stayed here beyond your expectations.